Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Near Memo. And today we have a special edition talking about AI, ChatGPT, SEO, and how these technologies are going to impact the future of local SEO. And joining us today, in addition to Mike Blumenthal, who's always here, or here 99.999% of the time, are Joy Hawkins, owner of Sterling Sky, and Darren Shaw, who's the founder of Whitespark. And these guys are leading local SEOs and leading thinkers in the space. And so we're very pleased to have you with us. And we want to sort of jump right into the conversation, unless you guys want to say anything more about who you are, your perspective, or what you're wearing, or...
I'm wearing a Beyonce shirt that I got from the concert there.
All right. And how is the weather in Canada? I know you're in different places today. You're both in Canada.
This is the first November in history on record that Edmonton has not had snow. It is weird out there. It is like... I think this is the end of the world, actually, that we don't have snow. So it's not good. There's something bad out there. It feels bad.
So like a couple hours south of you had snow. I was in Alberta last week and there was snow everywhere and it was freezing. So
well, you were in the mountains though. So
it's true.
Yeah, in the mountains. So Lake Louise, so beautiful.
Yes, there. So beautiful.
All right. And with that nature reference, we can jump right into the conversation. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, very interesting discussion. But let me start out by asking both of you, how have you integrated any AI tools, ChatGPT, into your agency work on a regular basis? Tell us about that and what in as much detail as you can. So Joy, why don't you start?
All right. Well, I think it varies quite a bit depending on what department or job people do. So on the creative side, it's been implemented quite a bit. So my husband that does all our video editing, he uses AI features like crazy, thinks they're wonderful, they're really cool. They save him an insane amount of time. So on that end, I'd say it's kind of meeting up to the hype. Where I feel like it's not meeting up to the hype is more on the content side. I think when AI first came out, everybody thought it was going to replace content writers. And you literally had people tweeting that, content writers were afraid of their job and things like that. And what we've kind of found over the years is that I do not think AI is near or anywhere close to where it would need to be, where you could literally click a button and then have an article that you're ready to publish, within 5 minutes. I know people are doing it, but definitely not my agency.
I have a quick question, Joy. That article of ours about Darren's research that you shared in your newsletter, did you read it yourself or not?
I did not.
Oh, okay. The way we created that article is sort of interesting, and I think it addresses the question of content to some extent, not completely. We recorded an interview, David and I and Greg recorded an interview, took the transcript, dropped the transcript into ChatGPT, told ChatGPT to write an article based on the transcript. And then David and Greg both edited the article for accuracy and flow and
coherence.
And so by limiting it to a subset of information, i.e. David's conversation about Darren's research, we were able to, in 25 minutes, publish an article that at least your editorial staff thought was up to snuff.
We thought it was the joke's on you.
Well, no. So I need to clarify, because I do agree, Mike. I think that it's great at that. Like you gave a really good use case for it. If you have content that has already been input by humans, and then you need to repurpose that somehow, like take a list and make it a blog, take a blog and make it a script. It does a good job of that and requires minimal editing. But like coming up from scratch, being like, I want a 500-word article on this criminal law in Texas. It's really inaccurate. And the amount of time it takes to fact check it is about the same amount of time that it would take just to write the article from scratch.
No, hear you on that. Absolutely agree.
Darren raised his hand.
Or you that's the whole thing. The amount of time that it takes to fact check it. It's like, I do wonder, like that exact example you gave, Mike, how much time did you actually save? Like, if you had just written the article, would you have saved that much time? You just took the transcript and then wrote the paragraphs yourself. Would you have like, I don't know, it would take me maybe 5 minutes longer. I don't know.
I wrote Darren. I wrote an article the preceding week about the findings themselves, and then we talked about them, and then that became the second article. And it took me, I don't know, half an hour maybe to write the article. I would say. So it's equivalent.
It isn't quite though. I mean, I spent 5 minutes on the technical side, gave the article to David, who is very, he doesn't like to write anymore, and he's very resistant to writing. But he agreed to look at and edit it. He said he spent 5 minutes. I don't know how long you spent editing it, but it was 8 minutes was a sunk cost on it. We recorded it. We already had it, so it was repurposed. So I think all in, Greg, it probably was half the 30 minutes or of extra time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Compared to what you spent.
But if you consider the recording itself, it's comparable, I think.
If you consider the recording itself, it is comparable. But I think it does set a model for how agencies can interact with their clients. You do a 5-minute interview about a topic, and then it's in their voice with their information, much less fact checking required. And so it is a model for agencies to do content.
And that segues nicely into some of the ways we use it at Whitespark that to answer Greg's original question. That is one of the things that we do. So we use it actually to seed questions. So for content for our clients, one of the great use cases is you ask a series of questions like, what are the common concerns that people have with a drain cleaning service? And so if you ask ChatGPT to come up with that list of concerns, and then you say, okay, now phrase them into questions, then you give those questions to your clients. So, hey, we want you to answer all these questions. There's a couple ways you can do it. You could either send them a form where they fill out their answers by typing, or you get on a Zoom call with them and record it. And then you just take their words, turn it into the transcript from the Zoom recording. And then you can actually see the content the way that you did, Mike, into getting the first draft, and then you have to finesse it and edit it and fact check it. And so we do actually do that for our clients, and you do use it for a number of other things like coming up with Q&A questions, because we like to pre-populate the Google Q&A section. We use it to come up with Google Post ideas. So we'll take, like, we know that this let's say dentist has pages on all of these different types of services they provide. We feed that to ChatGPT and say, create a Google post based on this content, or create like 5 Google posts based on this page of content. And so it creates the Google post content, and then our team still has to finesse it and edit it. But it does, it's like it takes some mental load off of the job. Like if you just give an employee, like one of our account managers, the job of taking this content and turning it into Google Posts, there's just a lot of like thinking. And so it does a lot of that sort of upfront thinking for you. And then it's just the editing. So it does speed up the process. I watched a really great podcast episode with Aaron Wyke on his new conversion podcast with Andy Crestodina. And Andy talked about his process for using ChatGPT for content generation. And I think he said that you're saving about 30% of the time, and that feels about right. I think that you actually said it right there, Mike. You said you saved maybe 30%. It was a little 30% faster than if you had just done it from scratch.
Right, but as you said, it
relieved some of the benefits we're getting.
Relieved the burden and allowed us to get an article out the door, which is a huge thing, right? Because it relieves some of that burden. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we use it for posts as well. I think we measured it, cut down the time it takes to create a post by about half. So it was substantial for posts, but it was because we had a really good prompt that was like including all of the things that we wanted in a Google post based on the study that we did. So like make sure it has an emoji, make sure it has a sense of urgency. Like we have a list, and I think the prompt we put on our blog, but using that, I love that it just places the emojis for you. Like that's a huge time saver. Like going and finding the right emoji and putting it in, that takes time, and it can automate that really well.
But that speaks, that's an interesting point though, just that you did previous research that you brought to bear on the prompt so that it could fulfill your level of expectation of output.
Yeah, you got to be specific. Like I found if you're really generic and you're like, optimize this title for YouTube, it's bad. So you got to specifically tell it what to do and like what things to include based on, studies that have been done on what types of things to include in titles or
So,
whatever.
so just to clarify, this is ChatGPT 4 that you guys are using?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you subscribe, obviously,
Yes.
because that I think that it's required.
Easiest
that-
$20 a month I
I know.
spend.
Right.
I was like,
Right.
I'd pay more, but don't tell them that.
Sam Altman is listening now that he's back at the helm.
I'm sure he's listening.
So are you using anything else? I mean, there are a bunch of other tools out in the market. There's, Claude and many of the sort of SaaS tools that people have been using are adding AI components. Is there anything else that you guys are using beyond ChatGPT in your workflows?
For images, we are using Midjourney and Adobe's. I'm a little worried about images though, because I feel like it's very, very new, and I'm kind of watching to see what happens with some of the legal stuff and Midjourney being trained on copyrighted material, stuff like that. I just have no idea what's going to come from that. So I feel a little better. My husband was telling me Adobe's AI was trained on their own stock images, so that feels more comfortable to me as an agency using something like that, where you're not going to run into issues down the road.
I think they're all indemnifying their customers against litigation. I think that most of these companies now have agreed to pay whatever fees or legal fees and settlement fees are involved. But that's a different topic. What about you, Darren? Are you using any other tools other than ChatGPT?
Yes, so there's a couple. One is Bard, actually. So I didn't know this until I asked my team, like, if they had any other ways that they were using AI tools in preparation for this. And so we were using ChatGPT to help with review responses. We respond to reviews for all of our clients. And so it's nice to kind of create a first draft of a review that references back to the review content. It is helpful for that. And apparently they are preferring Bard's review responses over ChatGPT. So they actually use Bard for review responses. And so that's interesting. I didn't realize that until this call. And again, Midjourney, which I find is so much better than the new DALL-E one in terms of generating images. So I really, we use that for some image generation, but not a lot.
So I actually think the new DALL-E 3 that you can get through ChatGPT is actually so much better than the previous version. It's almost as good as Midjourney, I think.
Yeah, almost as good.
Here's an interesting thing I did. I love the fact that as an author, I can generate graphic art that often is, for me, a visual joke. I don't explicitly tell people what the joke is. They have to figure it out, but it gives me the ability to do that. And the other day, David, in one of our podcasts, referred to one of Google's new search upgrades as whipped cream on SHIT. And I thought, oh, what a fascinating visual metaphor. I'm going to go to Midjourney and try to do it. Well, Midjourney obviously wouldn't accept poo, poop, dung, excrement, or any of those others, nor would DALL-E. But I was able to come up with a phrase that got through, which was a brown pile of overcooked mush with whipped cream on top. I gave it to Midjourney, DALL-E, and DALL-E through ChatGPT. And interestingly, Midjourney had this very optimistic, glowing, sort of cupcake look to it. DALL-E had a somewhat desserty look, and DALL-E through ChatGPT looked exactly the way I wanted it, like a little bit of whipped cream on top of a big pile of poo. And it was just fascinating because ChatGPT provides an interface layer that somehow understood what I was looking for, or was closer.
Right.
That it interpreted it for DALL-E, the command, and gave DALL-E a different command than I gave it. And it gave
that's the great thing. That's the great thing about DALL-E versus Midjourney is that DALL-E is taking your simplistic request and it's translating it into something much more specific that the machine can then deliver.
Right.
So I mean that's I think that's pretty interesting. And in Midjourney, I think you have to do the verbatim. You have to keep refining the prompt until you get what you want.
And I find Midjourney also with a lot of command lines. I find the interesting thing about ChatGPT with DALL-E is that it's the it does the command line work for you, which is fascinating. So,
Right. So,
anyways, if you want to see that image, it's in one of our most recent podcasts.
yes,
I need to see this image.
We can link to it in the text on the page hosting the video.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.